Hello, I am Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart. This is our discussion with Monique Brown, co-founder and managing director of The Growth Factory. The first part of this presentation of this CleanStart perspective can be found on our YouTube channel. There you can find many of our past discussions. Please go there, check it out, and subscribe.
That's great. Round of applause for Monique on that great presentation. I learned a lot there that I didn't know about. I mean, you and I have talked about Growth Factory and Growth Factory Ventures. And, every time I hear you speak, I learn something new about it. So this has been very valuable. Your first cohort started in September.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to do 2 a year. When are the applications going to be open for the next cohort?
Yeah, thanks for asking. They're open right now. We went from a deadline focused application process to just kind of open enrollment. So we're always looking, like we always want to be connected with great companies. And, I think people like to have deadlines. So we set an April 15th deadline for the May cohort. But the truth is that, if you are building a company in the region, we want to meet you and we'll figure it out from there. We'll be launching or kicking off our cohort 2 in May, cohort 3 in October. But like I said, we're continuing to design how we gather the cohorts. And, there's a lot of custom work that is getting done, like a lot of one-on work that gets done with the companies that we work with because of the nature of how different they all are. But there is a really important component of the program where we all come together. That we can onboard people into that process. So long story short, applications are always open. We always want to meet you, but this next cohort, if you get it in by April 15th, that gives us time to vet it and really get you onboarded from day one.
Well, that's very important. And the fact that you're on this continuous cycle keeps the door open, throughout the year for people to get ready, then make application, make presentations and try to get in the next cohort. Plus, I would assume if somebody doesn't get selected the first time they apply, they're eligible to apply again.
100%. It's, absolutely. I mean, that's such a hugely important point. And we see that with a lot of things. And just we're working on the capitalized pitch competition right now with the Kings, and the 8 companies were selected to present on March 21st. You'll see those and end up being celebrated on April 4th, I think it is, in Arena, April 3rd or 4th. But I bring it up because we have this year 2 companies that applied last year that didn't, advance through, right? Humanly, who won in 2020, that was his 2nd or 3rd time in the competition before he won, right? And he's in our cohort now and one of our fastest growing companies, right? It is not an overnight thing, right? It's a journey. So we know that, and we want to support that journey. And even if it's not the first time that you apply, you get in, we want to stay in touch and continue to support in whatever way we can. And down the road, who knows, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, creating that stream, that pipeline, that process that people can fit into has been so important in that ecosystem in our area. I'm sure that Laura and Jeff at Startup SAC feel the same thing. Certainly that's what we're trying to do at CleanStart. And now being able to tap new sources of venture money, having people invest that ordinarily wouldn't. That's huge because, you and I and Jack have talked before about the amount of wealth there is in this region compared to the amount that they get involved in venture.
Yep.
We've been very low.
Yeah.
It's one of the puzzles as to why more people don't get involved. So that's been really key in what you've said. And in terms of the 99 that you're trying to find, do you have an idea how many you've already got signed up? How close are we to getting the 99?
So we have all 99 soft circled. And so working to, we have some percentage of that, which I don't know off the top of my head, that have, already, transacted the documents, money in the bank kind of thing. But the rest are committed. So obviously through the process of, getting docs submitted and the like, sometimes people will fall out of that process. So, always open to talking about people who are interested in investing, because again, there's, SPVs and other opportunities to get involved if the fund does ultimately close. But yeah, it's my co-founder Rick has managed that process, and he's a superhero. Like, I don't know how he does everything he does, but he has found some amazing people that have, just never done this before, but have so much to offer beyond the capital to our community. Just new people, new energy, new ideas, new perspectives, new backgrounds. It's amazing. So
Well,
I'm excited.
That alone may be the greatest thing that the Growth Factory's accomplished, just tapping into the community and activating a lot of people to help. And so when they make an investment, you say the average is about 25,000. Well, what's the form of that investment? Is it convertible debt? Is it
Yeah, great
equity
question.
or what?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So we do the majority of those on a safe. And so it's a simple agreement for future equity. It's a very founder-friendly document. And many of our founders are already raising via a safe. And so if they have paper already in place, we'll typically transact on their paper. But if not, we'll provide that. And we have a side letter that adds two terms to that. One is pro rata rights, so that allows us to continue to invest in future rounds. And the second is information rights. And that's something that's important to us, because especially having so many new investors involved, it is important to us to build really strong communications, transparency, and reporting. And I think that's best practice for our founders too. And so we ask for monthly updates and quarterly financials. And I think, again, that's something that downstream they're going to have to do anyway. So we are committed to helping them build that habit.
No, and that really creates sort of a discipline for going forward, because any future investor is going to want to look at that. And so you're building a solid foundation for people moving forward. That's fantastic. And I would say for everybody listening in here, relative to clean tech, EV Life is in the King's Capitalized. Certainly, you've been
so
working
happy.
with them.
Yeah.
And I know you're open to a lot of other clean tech companies, and you do have mentors that can help in that area. CleanStart, of course.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like you, Gary. Yeah,
we're there to help. I think this is a great structure, and it's one of those things in our community that I just love, because we don't have a lot of people out there trying to duplicate what others are doing. We're all supporting each other. So you focused on the venture fund, this more formalized accelerator process. We want to feed into that. And I'll make note to people on the call, we will have our CEO crash course coming up in June. And that's a springboard to get more involved. So we'd love to see people, from the Growth Factory get involved with the CEO crash course for clean tech companies, and the reverse, if we can feed you. But now, you're dangling some very important money out there, that very early money for clean tech companies. We've worked to make sure that there is state money available through the CalSeed program, so we can make the journey a little bit more, small steps at a time.
Yeah,
exactly what you're doing, and just make sure you're doing the things that will advance you down the road. Huge. And I like the whole idea of the journey from founder to CEO. That's tough. That's very tough. People don't realize how tough that is when you one day have that realization, or your board tells you
yes,
you're going to need that realization that there are some things that are different about those two jobs. So, wow, so good to see this. Let's see if we have any questions out there in among the people that are listening in on this. And I'm going to take advantage. Well, I'm glad you raised your hand, Mark. I was going to throw a question to you anyway. But Mark Anderson with the SAC Business Journal, you've been following this, and gosh, you've been following the startup community for a really long time. I don't, it might be 20 years by now, but Go ahead and make a comment or ask a question, Mark.
I was curious, since we saw record amounts of money flow into startup investments and venture capital and private equity last year, whether you've seen that change dramatically since December. It looks like startup valuations are going down. There's interest rate shock and risk right now, and there's a war. Have you seen the investors backing up at all?
It's a great question, and it's definitely something I've been keeping my eye on, and that there is concern. I think one of the things in Sacramento that, in some ways I don't want to say insulated because that's not 100% accurate, but a lot of the valuations, in other markets were, concerning actually, that we were watching, especially end of last year. And in this Sacramento region, I feel like in some ways we still have like these really practical founders, right? Who are like, well, here's where I'm at, like I didn't feel like, especially in the companies that we saw come through, that there were non-defensible valuations in a sense. And so that really hasn't changed here that I've seen too much. From an investor standpoint, I think that, again, same thing is, our investors are investing in these companies because they are committed to building great companies in Sacramento. Hopefully the companies we're investing in will become world-class companies that compete well beyond Sacramento, but they're investing small amounts of capital across a lot of companies, and they are investing at good valuations, and they're investing in our community as they invest in these companies. And so it's, I think, we're not yet seeing people back away from this for that reason. Now, when it comes to, the point at which we'll need that capital infusion and follow-on capital from outside the region, I think that's going to be a slog. It was already, and I think it's going to continue to be, and we're doing the work right now to begin to build those relationships through the Global Accelerator Network. We have access to investors and mentors, corporate partners well beyond Sacramento, and we're seeing great engagement from that community into our companies, great interest. We're still seeing check writing, so we'll continue to monitor it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm hoping that we're building solid enough companies that the investment will make sense.
All right, thanks. And then all of the 99 are accredited, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you get any, or otherwise have been typically real estate people?
That's a great question. I think the answer to that is yes, but Rick is a better, he knows all 99. I don't know all 99 yet. I'm still meeting them. But yeah, investors who have traditionally invested in other asset classes, or who haven't, and invested outside of their typical wealth management portfolios, are again raising their hands. They're making what is a small percentage of their portfolio is being invested into this. We're not asking, we want people to sleep well at night. We're not asking them to bet the farm on this. It's like, can you put a little bit of what you're investing into this effort, because what happens when a GRIN grows. I mean, Mark invested into them, 2 fulsome high school kids who now have a company value just shy of $1 billion, right, and employing 300 people in the region. So it's that kind of thing that we're looking to create.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I like the whole thing about the 99. That's got a ring to it. And Sacramento, it has a long history of getting involved in entrepreneurial ventures. So we've gone from the big 4, who got involved in the Transcontinental Railroad, to the 99. So it's got a ring to it. Laura, you're doing a lot with startups as well, and taking advantage here of the interest probably from the viewers on a lot of ways that these things come together. Just add a few comments on Startup Sac and where you fit with Growth Factory and what Monique and Rick are doing.
Sure. So Startup SAC is a partner with Growth Factory. We our primary role has been to let entrepreneurs know that the Growth Factory exists and what the application process is, to promote them along the way. So that that's our role there. And likewise, Growth Factory and Monique, we meet frequently as an ecosystem, along with you and Thomas and some other players like Carlson Center, just so that everybody knows what's going on in Sacramento's startup ecosystem, so that we can provide the best value to the entrepreneurs. That if our program Startup SAC isn't covering something, we know who is, and we can give you an introduction, so entrepreneurs don't have to navigate what actually is a pretty deep and complex ecosystem. And complex is a good thing in a startup ecosystem. The more players you have, the more services are available for entrepreneurs. I had some questions for Monique on the upcoming cohort. You had 15 in your first cohort. Do you have a target number for the second? And then my other question is, if I was an entrepreneur applying for the Growth Factory by the April 15th date, what would the process look like in terms of, would I meet with you?
Mhm.
What would I go through before I would know if I was in the cohort?
Yeah, both really great questions. Thank you. So the answer to the target number for the second cohort is not 15. That's a lot, but it's been great. But I think we're looking at somewhere between 8 and 10, but the real answer is the right number of companies that we connect with that we feel like are a good fit at this time, right? And so we won't take companies just to hit a number, and if we feel like a company is right time, right fit right now, and we have 10, we'll take 11. So so that's kind of where we're at with that. The process is, so reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can submit an application via our website, which I think Laura already put in the chat. It's pretty standard stuff. So, if you don't have the answer to a question, leave it blank. Do the best you can in filling it out. If you don't have complete decks or videos or whatever, don't, just give us what you can give us. And then the next step is a call with me. So I do initial screening calls just to share a little more about, what we're looking for, get to know the founder a little bit and see if it's a fit, because we aren't a fit for everyone, right? People are looking for different things at different times. I had a founder call the other day, and it was a pre-revenue company that was looking to raise $500,000, and he wanted a $500,000 check, which isn't something that we can do, right? And so that wasn't a fit, and that's fine. We're here to support in whatever ways we can moving forward. But so we just do that, like, do you like what we're doing? Do you like what we're doing? Okay, should we have a deeper conversation? So get to know you call. The second step is they meet Mark. And again, that's Mark is our backyard, our backyard guy, right? It's like, hey, here's same kind of thing. Here's what we're working on. I think it's really, really important to us that the people that we work with, whether they're investors, founders, mentors, partners, are committed, obviously to their company, but to our community as well. That it's just so important to us, like the culture fit, and somebody who wants to give as much as they hopefully will get. And so we see that in our first cohort. I had one of our founders say, hey, 2 of the other founders reached out and said, what were your investment terms again? Because I want to invest in you. So we have founders investing in founders, like unbelievable, right? Like, but it's that kind of thing. Like, it's so important. So Mark is really, he really cares about that, and really cares about understanding how people feel about that. So he's second. Step 2. Step 3 is Rick. Rick is the smart one on the team. And so he's the one that does all the deep diving and a little more due diligence. If there's, product demos, business model, kind of diving into the business model, understanding where the team's at, products at, all that kind of stuff. Typically, he'll have a subject matter expert engaged in that if possible. Usually, I'll sit in on those calls where possible as well. So as you move through the process, you can fall out at any time for whatever reason, either like you're like, no, it's not exactly what I was looking for, or what have you, or it might be really clear that it's not the right stage or fit, and we'll definitely provide that feedback. So, and then we have more of a selection day, and that's where we really engage a broader set of our investors and mentors in reviewing the collection of companies that we're looking at, and identifying how we're going to put that together for the cohort. An offer is made, some initial diligence and paperwork are done. It's pre-seed investments, so the diligence process is aligned with the stage. It's not too cumbersome, but there are things that we need to do to make sure boxes are checked, and then we get started.
So
Thanks, Monique.
Martin Utley raised a good question here. You're looking at all types of ventures, but of course, we do have a lot of interest, and it's one of the things that CleanStart focuses on is companies that are, in the sustainable economy, the circular economy, the regenerative economy. What kind of screening criteria or what are you looking for in companies that are consistent with that, or is that even something that you pay that much attention to?
Great question. Of course, we love companies that are working to have an impact. We aren't filtering companies out if they don't have a plan for that. So, right now, I think we're just trying to understand who's in the landscape, where the opportunities are, how we can support people in building great businesses. We absolutely are mindful of impact, and whether that's building diverse teams or building solutions that are net positive for our world, and those things are certainly important, but I would say we don't necessarily filter out companies that aren't super far along in developing those plans for themselves. So I don't know if that answers the question, as I am trying to think of the companies that are in our cohort right now, and all doing really impactful work. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, and I would point out to Martin, that's one of the reasons that we're partnered with you. If there are companies that we can encourage, that could become a part of the circular economy, we want to give them our special attention. So it's not something necessarily that the Growth Factory specializes in, but we do. And the great part of our partnership is you've got the fund.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get companies up to the point where they can qualify for the startup funding, that's the kind of synergy we're trying to create.
Absolutely.
We are running a little bit over, but got some good questions on here. What's the exit timeline you're looking for companies that are in your cohorts? As soon as you've taken them through the year process, you try to get them fundable transactions, but when do people get the money back from their investment? What's the sort of timeline you're looking at there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've tried to do a lot of expectation setting around this, because as you know, Gary, like pre-seed stage companies, you're at the very beginning of a journey that, could be easily 7 to 10 years, right? And so this is a long-term investment. It's not something you're going to invest this year so you have extra vacation money for next year, right? It's definitely something that it will vary. We had the opportunity to invest in a number of companies in this first cohort that were a little further along and are tracking very positively towards Series A. And once you hit that, and if that growth continues, some of those companies we could see, the opportunity for returns, in 3 to 5 years. But we've also invested in, some life science companies that are pre-FDA approval, right? Those companies could very easily be closer to 10 years. So I think, the normal time horizon is we're deploying capital over the next 4 years. We'll be working really hard on capacity and company building. You can expect, I think the model has us, starting in years 5 through 7, beginning to harvest with some residual harvest in years 7 through 10.
Well, I think that's really important for looking for the investors among the 99 and getting the money there. That just expectation setting.
100%. Yeah.
As you know, Jack and I were in on some of the earliest stuff. And I can report I am getting checks on that now. All the original capital hasn't been paid back. That would be a great time, but there are still companies that are out there in that original portfolio that are growing, and I've got great expectations, but it really is, a decade-long journey.
Yeah.
This is not quick money.
And I think that's so important because, and then we say the same thing to our partners, working with a couple of cities and building some efforts in the city with entrepreneurship as this piece of their economic development portfolio. And it's look, this isn't going to create 1,000 jobs tomorrow, right? We're investing in the next 20 years, right? And just really being clear, it's a high risk asset class. There are companies that will fail. This takes a long time and a lot of work. There'll be bumps along the way. However, if we do this work together, flash forward, the return on the economy, innovation, investment, and human capital in this region is going to be significant.
Well, that's really great. We're going to have to wrap up here. Before we do, let me pitch a question to Jeff Macon. I see he's on the screen here. Jeff is with Fresno State's Water, Energy, and Technology Center. And they do run an accelerator down there. They also are connected with a fund, Valley Ventures, and with Rocket Fund. But just so that people are aware, just take a couple minutes here, Jeff, and explain where you fit in the ecosystem and what you're looking for. And you do offer classes and accelerator type program down there, but we just want to make sure people understand all the resources that we can bring to bear.
Yeah, Gary, thank you for that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I appreciate this webinar here with Monique and Growth Factory. Sounds like an awesome program. And we're glad to be part of the entrepreneur ecosystem with the Central Valley, including CleanStart. You're a member of our Blue Tech Valley Innovation Cluster. And just for our Fresno State WET Center, which stands for Water, Energy, Technology Center, is that we help water, energy, and ag tech ventures. And we do that through incubation, acceleration, and we have our accelerator, Valley Ventures Accelerator. And to date, we've helped over the last 5 years, about 86 ventures raise over $205 million in external capital. So we're pretty happy about that for little old Fresno State to help these ventures develop funding like that to continue through the multiple valleys of death that climate tech ventures have. But we're real happy to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak here and wish you, CleanStart, Growth Factory, all of us here in the Central Valley, success in trying to develop, economic powerhouses through entrepreneurs and provide clean, meaningful solutions to our communities.
Yeah, and Thomas has dropped in the chat some links to what the WET Center and Blue Tech Valley Collaborative offer. So if you're interested in that, you can follow up there. But we need to wrap up here. So another round of applause for Monique and everything that she's done. I love the 99. I love what you're doing with the fund. Love what you're doing with the accelerator. So on to the better things, great things that are going on. Over to you, Thomas.